COL's Chief Equity Strategist. Welcome to another episode of COL Conversations. The significant damages brought about by recent typhoons highlight the urgency to fight against climate change. One way to combat climate change is by switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources which emit little or no greenhouse gases. The government is cognizant of this and is targeting to increase the share of renewable energy in the power generation mix from 22% currently to 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. Today, we will be talking to one of the pioneers of the renewable energy sector in the Philippines, Alternergy Holdings. After raising 1.6 billion pesos in its March 2023 IPO, it would be interesting to know how big the company's renewable energy portfolio has grown and if we can expect more going forward. Before we start, just some quick reminders for our audience. We would like to remind everyone that this conversation is not an endorsement nor a recommendation to invest. This is being conducted for you to have a better understanding of the company and the people behind it so that you can make a more informed investment decision. All right, so without further ado, let me call on the people behind Alternergy to give us some updates. Joining us today are Vince Perez, the founder and chairman of Alternergy, Gerry Magbanua, co-founder and president of Alternergy, and Carmen Diaz, CFO and Chief Sustainability Officer of Alternergy. Hello and good morning, Vince, Gerry, and Carmen. Thank you for joining us in today's COL Conversations.
Thank you for welcoming us, April. We're pleased and delighted to be here with you on this COL Conversations.
Okay. So, Vince, I'd like to ask you the first question. So, one of the strengths that you always highlight about Alternergy is its status as a pioneer in the renewable energy sector. So, can you expound on this and why does it matter being a pioneer in the renewable energy space?
Thank you, April. Yes, we have been doing renewable energy way back in 2005 when we first built, even before Alternergy was formed, the first ever wind farm, not only in the Philippines, but in Southeast Asia. Now, what does it mean to be a pioneer? We could just say we've learned all the mistakes. We understand what it takes, the struggles, the hurdles, the permitting process. And having done this for 15 years now, we know what it takes to bring a project from a paper concept to reality. And that's the advantage we have by being a pioneer in renewable power. As you can see here in this slide, we built that first commercial wind farm in Ilocos Norte. We learned a lot from that in terms of challenges, in terms of transmission and other weather-related lessons. And because of that experience, we were awarded by the Department of Energy the first several wind service contracts throughout Luzon. That led us to actually do the very first non-recourse project finance for a wind project in 2014, which involved 3 banks who have never lent to a wind project. That led to us also working hand in hand with the Energy Regulatory Commission to approve a power sale agreement, the very first one that they reviewed for our Quirojon solar project in northern Mindanao. And lastly, we built for the first project outside the Philippines, a solar battery energy storage project in the Republic of Palau. We believe that this has been a wonderful lesson for us of how we integrate battery storage, which will become a very key component of renewable energy going forward. April.
Mhm. Okay, and I guess also it helps that you're a pioneer because you built all those relationships with regulators and potential suppliers and customers, etc., which I think also helps in speeding up the process.
Indeed, correct. So we built these relationships over the years, and through partners, we end up working with them again and again to facilitate how fast we could build the project into fruition. Indeed.
Okay. So anyway, Vince, can you share with us the projects that are currently in your portfolio? Where are they located and how large is their capacity?
We have done a lot. We have 11 projects currently already built and installed and operating. We have gotten today, as we speak, 27 active what we call service contracts from the Department of Energy. We've had several in the past, but this is what we have working on at the moment. And most of our wind projects, there are 4 of them, are in the northern part of Luzon because that's where the wind resource is best. That's where we have the northeast monsoon amihan. And our projects are therefore mostly in the northern part of Luzon. For solar, well, that could be easily in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We have 11 sites all over the country. A lot of them, as you could see, in the island of Panay and Negros. And finally, in hydro, we have several of that, mainly out in northern Luzon, which for us is easier to manage projects. It's just easy, several half a day drive to the mountains of the Sierra Madre and the Cordilleras. As you can see, we're very focused on the Philippines. It is our focus, except of course, we're starting to do one outside the Philippines in Palau, very similar to what we would be doing in the islands in the Philippines, a 100% diesel powered nation that we are replacing with solar and battery. So that's our footprint, very much active over the last 15 years, April.
Okay. So for my next question, let me ask this to Gerry, because, Vince has been showing us that, you have all these renewable energy power projects. But I've noticed that unlike other listed companies, you're not focused on one type of renewable energy project like solar. You're into wind and also hydro. So what is the rationale for this? Is there a benefit to being a diversified renewable energy company rather than just being a pure play?
First of all, April, just wanted to emphasize that Alternergy is actually a pure play renewable energy player. However, within that space, we work on these 3 technologies. We have wind, hydro, and solar. Why we were doing it, as you can see from the slide, the main purpose of that is we wanted to have or achieve a smoother revenue generation all throughout the year. As you can see here, when wind is producing at the highest level during the months of November to February, the hydro production is on the downside. The reverse is true. When hydro is high, the wind is low. And then you could see during the hot summer days in the months of March, April, May, you could see that the solar production is up. That's as reflected there on the left chart. So for us, that gives us a steady cash flow all throughout the year. And then on the right side, you could see that on a daily basis, we're also able to compensate or complement the production of solar and wind because when during the day peak, solar is generating high production while wind is not producing as much. So for us, that's complementary production. That's why we wanted to stay with these 3 technologies. April?
Okay. So during your IPO in 2023, I noticed that there were a lot of concerns about execution because you were still in the red in 2022, and you had a lot of aggressive expansion plans. So can you share with us again the factors that make you confident that you can execute on your aggressive expansion plans?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You can see that the main component for our success is really our ability to obtain offtakes for our projects. We have worked with different entities from Transco under the feed-in tariff program, the Palau Public Utilities for our Palau project, with Cepalco as a distribution utility based in Mindanao, with RES companies like Kratos, and other off-takers that we have in our portfolio. So that's key because it allows us to bankroll and finance our projects through partnership with the local banks. Local banks like projects that have full off-take agreements. And we've been working with these local banks with RCBC, BDO, Security Bank BPI and DBP, as well as in multinational banks like ADB and Export Finance Australia. They like these projects because of the offtake and our track record having worked with these banks over the years. The other component of our success is really our ability to work with the transmission companies like Meralco and NGCP. That is a key component, as we can discuss later on. These access to transmission grid is key as it is becoming an issue in the country. And of course, the last but not the least is our ability to work with different government authorities, LGUs, the local government agencies, national government agencies. Those are the key components in bringing success in putting projects on the ground. And we really need to work with these different agencies. And over time, in the last 15 years, we've successfully handled and worked with these different agencies, right, Peter?
Okay. So a while ago, you talked about transmission lines, but let's just put that on pause first. And now I'd like to ask you about some updates on the projects that you talked about during the IPO, the Tanay Wind and Alabat Island Wind. I mean, what is the status of these projects?
Yes, we have been very excited working on these two projects. Since we won the Green Energy Auction Program in July of last year, remarkably, we've been able to immediately get these projects into construction in less than a year's time. To note, the Alabat project began construction in April of this year, while the Tanay project proceeded to construction stage in June of this year. And then not only that, April, we actually had a third project that also began construction this year, and that is the Solana project. So the whole team is busy. And probably that is an understatement. We're all excited to getting these projects completed and built and ready to produce power before the end of next year.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to ask about transmission lines, because you talked about that. One of the problems right now facing a lot of power generation companies is access to transmission lines. So can you share with us your access to transmission lines as far as these three projects are concerned?
Yes. So for instance, that as I mentioned earlier, transmission line is key. Having access to that. For instance, in our Alabat project, we have to build a 37-kilometer line. It is long, but it's not that long. We have done a longer transmission line before in the Bangi project. It was we built a 59-kilometer line connecting the project to Ilocos. So here we're only building a 37-kilometer line, and the good thing is we've identified this as an issue earlier on, and therefore we had some lead time to get this addressed, and we thankfully were able to do that. And at the moment, the construction is already starting in terms of building that line. On the Tanay project, we're fortunate that this project is located near an NGCP transmission line, which is only 2 kilometers. We've been engaging with NGCP to allow us to connect to their transmission line. And probably that's the challenge, but given our relationship, given the track record that having worked with NGCP over the number of years, we've been able to convince them to allow us to build that transmission line ourselves. This is a concept where we're really taking matters in our hands, because we don't want NGCP to be, as they are so busy with building several projects all over the country, it may take them some time if we have to wait for them to build the facility. So here, taking matters in our hands, we're building this 2-kilometer facility and connect our project to NGCP. Over to the Solana project, this is a relatively short transmission access. It's only 350 meters away from the NGCP substation. So again, that's one of the key components that we look at when in siting our projects. We immediately identify what are the key issues, where are we going to connect. So those are the things that we watch out for right at the very start of identifying a project. So on these three projects, happy to note that transmission line will not be an issue.
Okay, that's good. So at least one less cause of a potential delay in the project.
Indeed, indeed.
Okay, so now, Carmen, I'd like to turn to you. If I'm looking at this slide, I noticed that Tanay Wind and Alabat will be operational by the end of 2025, and of course, we also have the Solana solar project. So that's quite a lot. What is the total CapEx for these projects, and how will Alternergy finance these projects? I mean, you only had an IPO raising 1.6 billion, but these projects are probably costing a lot of money.
Yes, these are kind of costly. So Alternergy has secured 19 billion pesos in total project financing for our Tanay Alabat wind projects and our Solana solar project. We were able to obtain through our strategic partnerships with our local commercial banks. We were able to arrange non-recourse project finance facilities with an optimal 75-25 debt equity structure. In addition to that, these sustainable finance initiatives not only align with our green finance framework, but also meaningfully contribute to all our 17 UN SDGs. So from the oversubscribed 1.6 billion IPO in March 2023, you mentioned a while ago, this was followed by significant financial milestones, which includes the 1.45 perpetual preferred shares we had with GSIS last November, the 2 billion green corporate loan we had with BDO Unibank in May this year, the 14.3 billion total project finance facilities that I recently mentioned for our Tanay, Alabat, and solar projects. So we're kind of proud to say that these successful capital raising activities have actually exceeded our initial projection by raising around 20 billion pesos in just 15 months versus our original forecast of raising the same amount, 20 billion pesos, in 5 years.
I see. So, a while ago, I think there was a slide that was flashed where you showed green standards compliance, Alternergy being able to meet the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, I'm just curious if, what does it take to be part of say, an ESG fund? And is that something that, you will be able to meet? And, are there funds interested in investing in you, or, looking at you to be part of an index?
Yes. Us being a pure play RE company is already an advantage. So when we were issuing our green corporate loan, ADB, Asian Development Bank, easily reached out to us and provided technical assistance to help us prepare our green finance framework. So with that, we were able to issue our financial instruments and put green label in these instruments. These are actually attracted investors, FIs, DFIs alike, because they themselves have their own ESG portfolios. They've allocated funds for such RE projects.
Okay, so that's good. At least financing is much easier with that. Okay. So now, I think one of the most important questions that investors like, our clients of COL Financial are concerned about is, what can investors expect in terms of growth in first power generation portfolio output, and then of course profitability in the next few years?
Yeah. So currently we have a gross installed capacity of 86 megawatts. This is expected to grow by 5.8 times in capacity in 2 years, or this is what we call our road to 500 megawatts in 2026. This includes, as what Gerry mentioned, our 5 projects under construction as we speak: the Tanay Alabat wind projects, our Solana solar project, and our 2 run-of-river hydro projects. But actually, what is important is our RE projects generation output, because this is the main driver of our EBITDA growth. So by 2026, we anticipate our attributable output will significantly increase by 21 times, expanding from 32 million kilowatt hour in 2024 to 684 million kilowatt hour in 2026.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering why the attributable capacity will increase much faster. Is it because the blue one represents wind, like wind
Yes.
would come out with more, and your ownership in wind is higher compared to, say, solar and hydro?
Yes, specifically for Tanay and Alabat, well, Tanay Alabat wind projects, these are 100% owned by Alternergy. As you can see in this chart, it's mostly blue, and you're right, blue is our wind projects. These are the wind projects. Then the yellow one is our solar project.
April, if I may also just add to what Carmen just
Okay.
mentioned. The main driver also there is that if you noticed from our previous slides, the capacity factor for wind is actually so much higher than solar. So that is why in terms of capacity, you'd see that the same capacity of solar and wind, as you can see here, the growth is only 5 times. But in terms of production, as you correctly pointed out, the growth that we anticipate is 21 times. And that is driven by the fact that the wind will be producing twice as much as solar for every capacity that will be put on the ground. So that is the main driver for the disparity, the exponential growth that we see in terms of generation. And we wanted to emphasize that point because, as Carmen mentioned, it's not the capacity that we make money or we earn revenues. It's actually by the actual production that we generate and sell and metered and sell to consumers. So that's really the one that brings in the revenue to the company.
Okay, so that's very important to highlight, no, to our investors. So that said, I mean, what can we expect in terms of revenues or EBITDA? Do you have something like that?
Yes, we're really looking forward to achieving our significant EBITDA growth in 2026. As mentioned a while ago, this is mainly driven by our Tanay and Alabat wind projects when they come in, when they start operating. So we expect our consolidated EBITDA to grow by 12 times from 310 million in 2024 to 3.6 billion in 2026.
Okay. Wow, I mean, that's quite impressive. And the reason why 2026 will increase significantly, I'm supposing, is because that will be the full year of the wind projects, because I think by earlier on we were talking about it. Their completion is around the fourth quarter or later part of 2025, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, this is quite impressive, no, considering that for 2024 it's you're only expecting an EBITDA of around 300 million, and by 2026 3.6 billion. So that's around 10 times, 12 times growth in EBITDA. So that's it. Like, what is your current market capitalization?
Yeah, so our market cap now is at 3.6 billion based on yesterday's closing price per share at 92 cents. This is cheap considering the expected earnings growth in 2026.
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, it's quite impressive, for you to be generating that much, and the current market cap is just at par with your projected EBITDA by then. Okay, but that said, I think a lot of investors, of course, want to know if you will be, or if there are plans to pay cash dividends by 2026, because they might say, yeah, the stock would be cheap, but I mean, what can we expect? I mean, what type of returns can we expect? I mean, what if the share price doesn't go up even with the strong earnings? Can they at least expect some cash dividends?
Yes, so at Alternergy, we prioritize shareholder value. Given our Tanay and Alabat wind projects will generate significant EBITDA in 2026, we anticipate subsequent cash dividend payouts by then. This is to reward our shareholders' trust in the company.
Okay, so maybe it's too early to ask right now how much they can expect, but at least it's good to know that the patient shareholders who if this really does materialize can expect to receive some cash dividends.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah, definitely. So next, I think I think it's all over the news right now. People are talking about Trump winning the elections, but of course, we know that this is not necessarily good for the Philippines, especially in financial markets, because interest rates are expected to stay high or go up, and the peso is weakening. I'm just curious, Gerry, like, how do you protect yourself against interest rate and forex risk?
Like Carmen to answer that question, April.
Okay. We've
Okay.
Yeah. We've actually assessed several market scenarios, which includes the US presidential election and its direct impact in the Philippine macroeconomy. We proactively mitigate risk associated with what we mentioned, high interest rates and FX fluctuations by implementing risk management mechanisms. For instance, we successfully integrated a dynamic interest rate strategy in our loan agreements with our local commercial lenders. We've incorporated fixed interest rate mechanism in 3 to 5 years, and we also have a floating rate mechanism protecting us from these interest rate volatility. It's a strategic approach which provides us with both flexibility and stability, ensuring predictable cash flows and effectively managing potential risks from the rising US interest rate. On the FX risk side, in the short term, we actually monitor market conditions. In our company, we have this weekly investment committee meetings. We have roundtable discussions helping us guiding us in making strategic dollar purchases to anticipate our payment needs and mitigate FX exposure. So thankfully, our wind and solar projects have short construction period. Solar around 9 months and wind around 12 to 18 months, allowing us to manage forex risks during this phase. So once these projects are completed, all our costs will be denominated in Philippine pesos, reducing ongoing exposure to currency fluctuations.
Okay. So that said, we do have the normal risk naman. What about risks of not meeting your attractive EBITDA targets? Because of course, I mean, when we see all this EBITDA, it seems so attractive. Like, first of all, what kind of assumptions were made when you projected a 3.6 billion EBITDA? Are they aggressive or are they conservative? And what about natural disasters? Like, of course, that would impact your output and potentially cause some damages in your projects. So how does Alternergy mitigate such risks? I think Gerry can now answer these questions.
Happy to answer that question, April. So you mentioned about the assumptions that went into this. We did some conservative assumptions here. For example, normally a company would be forecasting production based on a P50. What that means is that 50% of the time that the resource will be generated. In our case, we're not using P50, we're using a P75. So that means only 75%. That means we're only projecting a lower production because it's based on a P75. Our degree of probability of achieving that is higher because that target is lower. So what that means, the revenue volume that we anticipate here or project here is conservative that way. Now, you mentioned about other factors like climate change impact.
Yeah.
That's a very relevant question in this today. Because as you know, the country is faced with natural calamity risks. However, we have built-in mechanism in our contracting, in the structure of our contracts. For example, our construction contracts with the balance of plant supplier have embedded features wherein some of this, to the extent of some weather disturbances, it is the contractor who's taking the risk of that. So that means our contract, where it's structured that it will be delivered within a fixed time and a fixed cost, that means all that risks of weather disturbances will be borne by the contractor. So that's number one. Number two, if that mechanism is not able to respond to a particular risk, we also have a backup mechanism, and that is by making sure that we are adequately covered by our insurance procurement. So we're happy to note that for the Tanay, Solana, and Alabat wind projects, we've been able to get the best insurance cover there is available in the market, be it from the local market as well as the international market. So all these have been factored in, and this is a requirement by the lenders, and we believe in these products, and we sit down with best insurance advisors to work with us to obtaining and putting together a very robust insurance package. So I could say that you could sleep better at night having these mechanisms in place for these projects, April.
Okay. So some additional questions. So I was looking at your presentation, and you talked about targeting 500 megawatts by 2026. However, when I was looking through the numbers, it seems like the 20 billion you have raised so far will only be enough to fund your CapEx up to 311 megawatts. So what's the status of the additional 190 megawatts of capacity that you plan to put in place by 2026? Do you plan to raise more capital in the near term to fund the additional capacity?
Yes, indeed. And as a developer, we continue to build our pipeline, and the 200 or so megawatts that we plan to build after the first 225 megawatts. Therefore, we are also in constant lookout for doing capital raising activities. As a matter of fact, we have hired financial advisors already to roll out our next batch of fundraising activities. We'll be announcing the details of that in the coming months, but rest assured that we are in lockstep as we develop more projects to our road to 500 megawatts by 2026. We're also doing the same level of activity and enthusiasm in raising capital to match the timing of these project implementation.
Mm-hmm. Do you already have an idea of how much the CapEx will be for the additional 190 megawatts?
It's closer to 20 billion. I'd say around 18 billion pesos is what will be required to bankroll the 190 megawatts or so of capacity. April.
And then the mix will again be 25-75, 25% equity, which would be a mix of common and preferreds, I'm guessing, and then 75 is debt.
That is correct. So we always pride in ourselves in being able to work with local banks. So like this is now a formula for us, a cookie cutter that we, if you like, that we could use. So Tanay and Alabat and Solana 75-25. We will do the same for the succeeding projects that we will have. And then on the equity structure, as you correctly pointed out, we will be looking at common and potentially preferred structure for the equity.
Mm-hmm. But I'm guessing that you already have certain projects that you're eyeing for this 190 megawatts. So now the focus would be on fundraising.
Indeed. So yes, we've been really busy on the background to jumpstart on the next batch of projects that we'll bring in following the completion of that Alabat and Tanay project. So we've been very bullish since the IPO, and we are working doubly hard to putting together the financing package so that we could immediately implement these projects as soon as the Alabat and Tanay projects are done sometime next year.
Okay. So before we end, do you have any parting words for our viewers? Maybe I can call on Vince to give the last last few words for our audience.
Thank you, April. Definitely. Thank you for again inviting us for your COL conversation. I think we could just summarize that we have six key strategies, April. First and foremost, we're very focused on the Philippines. We know this country well. We know the regulatory framework. We have relationships here that go beyond decades. We try not to diffuse our energy by being all over the region. Yes, tactically, we might expand in other countries, but very tactically. Two, we're not reckless. We're conservative in the sense that all our power projects, we have to know that we are selling the power, the electricity. That is a fundamental strategy of us. We don't take what we call merchant risk, that we're going to just sell whatever is in this wholesale market. So fully contracted, and that by having it fully contracted, we know that our projects are what we call bankable, that we are able to attract attractive financing from our partner banks, our relationship of banks that continue to lend to us, and these are non-recourse project financing. By the fact that they're non-recourse, we know that these projects are well structured, and for that reason, we're able to get attractive rates, as alluded to, 75-25, which is not common. Actually, it's typically 60-40 or 70-30 for others, but because of our experience from being a pioneer, we're able to get these attractive financing terms. We mentioned that we are a triple play. We're not just related to one resource. And the reason for that mainly is the fact that we want to diversify our source of cash flow, whether it's weather related or seasonality in the year. We do wind, solar, and run-of-river hydro, and also battery storage. Depends on the time of the year, if there will always be a renewable resource in that sense. Also, in the fact that some, like particularly wind, they generate more cash flow per megawatt than solar, and that's why for us, the triple play is a very unique strategy of our company. You had mentioned that transmission is a challenge for any power projects, whether it's renewable or not, and therefore for us, every projects we do are bite-sized. They have to be accessible to a connection point, and if necessary, we are even willing to build the transmission connection in order to fast-track our projects to meet our very aggressive project pipeline. I think lastly, which is sort of a secret sauce of Alternergy, we are quite proactive in engaging with the regulatory agencies, whether the national departments or the regional offices, and particularly whether it's a barangay, a municipality of a province. Again, these are our host communities. They are our social fence, and therefore working with them usually ensures that we're able to work in areas that have attractive resources of renewable. One of the things that really is a key asset of the company is our management. The management, this company is management owned. Aside from what we have done with our IPO, where we sold 33% of the company is owned by the public, the rest is owned by management. So we're very much aligned in creating shareholder value. Every one of us owns shares in the company, and I'm quite proud of our team. It's a very diverse, complementary expertise. We have people with expertise in finance, legal, regulatory, accounting, permitting. We have engineers in mechanical, civil, electrical, and with all of that, I'm quite proud. We keep ourselves small, so we're mobile and flexible in getting projects up and running. It's already been mentioned that our market cap is equal to the EBITDA of 2026. 1 times price to EBITDA is ridiculously cheap compared to peers that are trading at 8 to 12 times. So we know the future is bright for us, not only for our pipeline, but also for our shareholder value. I guess we're all pretty much energized and motivated here. Why? We're very much committed to altering the landscape with alternative energy. We all have children, grandchildren, nephews, and nieces. We want to leave behind a sustainable future for this next generation. So thank you once again, April and COL Conversation, for inviting us today.
Okay, so with that, thank you very much, Vince, Gerry, and Carmen, for taking time today to give us some updates on Alternergy. I wish you all the best in executing your aggressive expansion plans, because it won't only benefit the shareholders of Alternergy, but also the entire Philippines, as you have said, which is highly vulnerable to climate change. Of course, we want to leave the next generation with a better world. Okay, so Alternergy has an exciting growth story as it plans to increase its capacity from 86 megawatts this year to 500 megawatts in 2026. This in turn would allow its EBITDA to increase more than 10 times from 310 million this year to 3.6 billion in 2026. Factors that will help it execute on its ambitious growth plan include its extensive experience in the renewable energy space, being pioneers. This means relationships with regulators, suppliers, sources of capital, and customers, and knowing what it takes to successfully build a profitable renewable energy portfolio. In fact, the growing visibility of its original plan to increase its capacity to 311 megawatts by 2025 is a testament to its ability to execute. Valuations seem very attractive given that Alternergy's market capitalization at 92 centavos per share is only 3.6 billion pesos, which is at par with its projected 2026 EBITDA of also 3.6 billion pesos. Please feel free to view our research notes on Alternergy as well. A summarized version will be sent to you guys via email. If you would like to join future call conversations, you may register through bit.ly/callcon sign up so you can be part of our invite list. And that's it for this edition of Call Conversations. I'm April Tan, Call's Chief Equity Strategist and your host for today's Call Conversations. Thank you for watching and have a great week ahead.